Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this press conference on impact investing for a sustainable food system. This conference is organized by ProVeg International, a global food awareness organization working on accelerating the ongoing shift towards more plant-sourced proteins. We support healthy plant-rich diets and alternative proteins as one of the key solutions to mitigate the impact of food systems on climate change. I'm very excited to introduce our first speaker, Elysabeth Alfano. Elysabeth is a CEO of VegTech Invest, which is the advisor creator of the world's only plant-based innovation ETF, EATV. Elysabeth, I'll let you have 10-15 minutes.
Hi, everybody. I'm really happy to be here. I am so excited about the change that we're going to see in our global food supply system. But for that change to take place, what we need to do is invest in alternative proteins and plant-based innovation if we're going to meet our 2030 and 2050 goals. Let's get into it and see how we do it. So how can the private sector do its part to move the global food supply system to be more sustainable? Governments can't do it alone. Individuals and the private sector can invest. Well, they should be investing in plant-based innovation. For those of you who don't know, I'll quickly go over what is plant-based innovation, and then we'll see how we can invest in it and what kind of impact it's going to have. Of course, you've probably all seen plant-based burgers, plant-based foods. These are veggies and whole grains and legumes and peas and other alternative proteins that are being used to make plant-based burgers and sausage and deli meats and the meats that we know and love, but those that are not having a deleterious impact on the planet. Fermented proteins, so the using of microbes to grow whole pieces of food or specific proteins. So we're already very familiar with fermentation because of beer and tea and bread. So just taking that to the next level with alternative proteins. And then finally, cultivated meat, where we take cells and in a controlled scenario, we grow whole cuts of meat or even just grow that fat. And then you'll see blended products of animal fat that is without the animal, so without the deforestation, without the water use, without the pandemic risk. Animal fats blended with veggie proteins, and so you'll have really yummy tasting food that has no impact on the planet. So why are we talking about investing in plant-based innovation? Well, because the companies that are innovating with plants and plant-derived ingredients to replace animal products are solving some of the world's most pressing issues. In fact, solving the problems that we're talking about here at COP27. Let's see how it solves it. Currently, our global food supply system, based on animal proteins, animal agriculture, leading cause of greenhouse gas emissions, 16.5% to 20% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions comes from animal agriculture. A whopping 37% of the U.S. methane comes from animal agriculture. The global methane emissions number is about 32%. As we all know, we will not sufficiently impact climate change in the time that we need to do it if we don't address methane. The way to address methane is to replace animal proteins. Number two is that animal agriculture is responsible for a whopping 41% of the world's tropical deforestation. Ultimately, we cut down trees that do pull carbon from the air, but we cut down trees to grow crops, foods that have fiber and protein. Do we give that food to people? No, we give it to animals. Colossally inefficient. Used to serve us well, but no longer does, and we just need to use our resources smarter. Which takes us to point 3. As we discuss food insecurity, our challenge is, of course, to feed a growing population. If we misuse our resources, if we misuse our land, misuse our water, misuse our trees, ultimately, we're just spending our time feeding animals, and we're not going to have enough food to feed people. So we need to focus on an efficient system, and that is alternative proteins and plant-based innovation. Here's just an example from ourworldindata.org. I want to focus on my cursor. Can you see my cursor? Oh, you can't. Oh, my gosh. Okay, well, if you go down to the first red line, you see that 77% of our agricultural land is used to graze and grow crops for animals. This 77% only gives us 18% of our food calories. So what an inefficient business equation. That's not what we like to see. We like to use our resources to better feed our planet, not use all our resources and not get anything back. Well, 18%, certainly not enough. And then a final boost is we're, of course, concerned with planetary health, but we're concerned with human health. So plant-based foods are better for you and also don't have the pandemic risk. So according to the United Nations, the top 3 reasons for the next pandemic, not the pandemic that we're in right now, but the next one, are all related to eating meat and the intensification of animal factories. For the sake of our planet, we really need to get rid of that risk. Ultimately, we have a major task in front of us. We must create more food that is more nutritious in a shorter amount of time, using fewer resources and creating less damage. So to do that, we need to do impact investing, and we need to do investing in an alternative now. So what kind of impact are we talking? Well, let's look at that. As we dive in, you see this study comes from the Boston Consulting Group. And if anybody wants these slides, I can give them to you later. I realize this is kind of tiny. So if you focus here, you see that plant-based innovation and alternative proteins are 3 times more impactful at reducing greenhouse gas emissions than building alternatives. It is 11 times more impactful from an investment standpoint of reducing greenhouse gas emissions as compared to electric vehicles, and it's a whopping 20 times more impactful than replacing aviation. The reason for this is that it's less expensive and faster to go to market by replacing food systems than it is to, let's say, build a completely new efficient plane or build a completely new efficient building. So we're talking about major impact that we can see right away. From a granular level, let's get into it burger by burger. If we compare a Beyond Meat burger, although this will stand for almost any burger, but if we compare Beyond Meat with a regular beef burger, you'll see that Beyond Meat uses 99% less water, 93% less land, 90% fewer greenhouse gases emissions, and 46% less energy. These are the kind of numbers we like to see. So how can we invest for impact? Well, there's investing in the public markets. It's what we do. We focus on all the publicly traded companies up and down the supply chain that are innovating to replace animal products for sustainable consumption. Of course, you don't have to follow what we do. You could just go and pick the companies yourself. But it is possible from an individual level or a corporate level or a government level to start taking your investment portfolio and putting that money to work for the planet. Of course, it's not just the public markets, it's also the private sector, those new, novel, innovative companies that are tiny and small and very private, not yet public, but they are creating solutions. And so a government or a corporation or an individual can invest in those startups. Take here, look at what the government of Israel is doing, putting in $440 million into research and $72 million into scaling hubs for more innovation. What they intend to see if they invest these dollars, and you have to invest the dollars to get the results, they intend to get $8 billion in taxes and 55,000 jobs. What I want you to take away from this is that sometimes people think shifting the global food supply system means sacrifice. The picture that we are painting here is this is an abundant situation. This is a situation that is better for us. We're talking about economic health as much as we're talking about planetary health and as much as we're talking about personal health. So this is an abundant situation. Again, our current food supply system used to serve us well. No shame in that. It used to do us right. It no longer does, and we're in dire need for something better. A last example is, if you want to get granular, here you can do something with almost no capital investment. I take this example of LinkedIn in San Francisco. They took their San Francisco cafeteria 2/3 plant-based, not even 100%, because we know the world's not going vegan. Everybody knows that. But they're shifting their diet to some more plant-based alternatives. When LinkedIn did that, for 3 months, they shifted to 2/3 plant-based. Each individual saw a reduction of their own kilograms of CO2 go from 2.2 to 0.78. So everyone is involved. LinkedIn saw their corporate numbers, because it's not just the financial balance sheet, but it is the climate balance sheet. Their numbers went down 14,000 kilograms of CO2 in their pilot program. So they're very happy with that. So we've got all these great numbers. We see the impact. Are we investing in alternative proteins like we're investing in renewable energy? No, you see this enormous disparity, 2.4 trillion going into alternative energies, but only 11.4 billion going into alternative proteins. So it's something that we need to get involved in right away, and I hope that we will talk about it today and tomorrow at this COP, and then also COP next year. Those who do get in early, the investors that get the vision, those investors being corporations, governments, or individuals, you'll see those greenhouse gas returns as you prep for 2030. It's one of the reasons LinkedIn did that pilot program. Without doing anything differently, they're able to put on paper that they are working towards their 2030 goals, and they're able to put greenhouse gas emissions reductions in ink for people to see. So that's a very important thing for many corporations. Obviously, we're all hoping for financial returns. But then there's that equity you get from being a leader in the space. You look at the city-state of Singapore, you look at Israel, you look at some large corporations really trying to move the needle for food innovation, and that's going to make a difference with their branding long term. I want to leave room for my colleagues. Thank you, everyone.
I will now open the Q&A for 5 minutes if there are questions.
Hello, and thank you for the panel. Just wondering if you have any predictions on the size of this plant-based growth that has been discussed?
Yeah, I'll quote the Boston Consulting Group. They say that by 2035, the sector will be worth $290 billion. Of course, this is predicated on investing in the sector and innovation taking place in the sector, which of course is due to investment in the sector. But that is underscored by Bloomberg, which also believes that it's going to be 11% of the market by 2035. So again, I just want to stress there seems to be this understanding that shifting our global food supply system means that we'd be taking away and that there'd be some sort of sacrifice. But millennials and Gen Z and the younger generations are embracing this, and they're the ones really fostering the growth, and they're excited about new options, which is why you'll see any random millennial basket in the grocery store always have some plant-based options. According to the Plant-Based Foods Association, 79% of millennials have at least one or two plant-based foods options in their category of choices. So I think the younger generations are embracing it, and we need to just step up to the plate and invest.
Thank you, Elizabeth. One more question, I think.
Thank you very much from the faith communities, from the World Council of Churches. My question is very simple. Now there is a lack of food in Africa, Asia, Latin America. So how can we organize a campaign to offer subsidies and food to these people, but to be vegetarian food? Because we know now people who get food related to animals, we have more diseases, and so we spend a lot of money later for the medical treatment. Why you don't organize also at the same time a campaign for every dollar we spend on military activities to give $1 to provide food to the kids who are the victims of our chaos we created through the climate change crisis? Because when we're talking about the implementation of the Paris Global Agreement and to get the Sustainable Development Goals, is this perspective of sharing what nature gives us and not to be the enemies and the people who destroy living organizations. As humans, as you know, we are the 0.01%, and we are responsible as humans for the 99.9% of the destructions. And me, as a theologian, I call the people who are eating meat that they have the DNA of Cain, who killed even his own brother. Thank you.
I'm happy to go.
So I think that's a question for policymakers. So we ourselves operate in Africa and in Latin America, and we do everything we can to make our products as affordable as possible because we think it's really important that people can access plant-based products. But as regards subsidies and promotion campaigns and all the level playing field issues that I was talking about, we can't do those alone. It has to be a collaborative effort, and it has to be it has to work alongside governments. But I totally agree that affordability is a really important point, especially in markets where the transition is more difficult.
Yeah. I agree. It's one of the areas where I'd like to see the private sector hop in. Right now, governments are incentivizing the wrong thing. They're incentivizing to eat the products that make us sick and cause planetary trouble. So I'd like to see the same incentives, as you mentioned, towards the things that make us healthy, and then we get those healthcare cost savings along the way. So that's pressure on policymakers, and I believe we here can put pressure on policymakers, but also the private sector does that. So the more the private sector gets involved in innovating for better replacements, the more people want those replacements, the more those replacements take over on the plate, and then the more the subsidies shift to the larger section of the plate.
I think we can close then. Thank you very much. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Perrin. And yeah, we can take a picture in front of...
Wonderful. And if anybody wants slides or they have more questions, they can reach out to me on LinkedIn.